Our schools face a lot of important responsibilities. There are an awful lot of kids who don't come to public schools prepared to learn, ready to learn. They don't come from Ozzie and Harriet's neighborhood, where they've been nurtured at home, helped with their homework, and are prepared to come to school, ready to improve themselves. It's up to the teacher and teachers and staff to do what they can to put these children whole so that they're in a position to try to improve themselves and fulfill the promise that's within themselves. And our schools do a great job. Regardless of whether or not there's support for a referendum or not, the people in this area are proud of this school system. This school system defines the community, defines the people. And there are an awful lot of success stories from the Spooner School District. Governor, let me state 4 or 5 things, and then Steve and Nick comment before we open it up. The governor's primary philosophy is that everybody ought to have a choice what's best for themselves. In other words, let every parent decide what is good for themselves, and the heck with the rest. Our whole society is based upon a commitment for the good of all, not for the good of self. That's what public schools are about. The governor is converting the notion that it takes a village to educate a child and changing it to the law of the jungle, where every student's well-being will be dependent upon the will of their parent, not the well-being and will and commitment of the community. We owe all these children our very best effort, whether they are the highest on the SAT or the ACT, or whether they have a 40 or 50 IQ because they are a special needs child. This school system accepts all of them. Private schools do not. And to suggest that this state is now going to prioritize spending money on private education at the expense of 870,000 public school students is sinful. Now let me tell you about the mythology of the governor's choice plan. There's 2 huge mistakes he makes in this budget that are being soundly condemned. One is no new money for spending for public school kids. Last budget, he cut every spending for every child by $550. In this budget, there's no new money, but there is for private schools. That's number 1. Number 2, he is building his philosophy on a mythology that somehow one test, a new test, that was scores were released last year, should be the criteria upon which we judge schools against each other. The state enacted a new test last year, and he's going to use the test scores from that one test. It's like the Green Bay Packers, who have a bad first quarter, saying, well, we had a bad first quarter, the game's over. You don't judge people based upon one little period of time, particularly in education. It's over how they do throughout the year, their improvement to the next year, how they do in their junior year, how they progress. That's what learning is about. Yet he chose one test for the convenience to expand the choice program to 9 more school districts, which include the City of Superior School District, in which that school district has now been classified as a failing school because the middle school and the high school did not score well on a test that was, everyone admits, was not supposed to be used for punishment, but rather to be a learning tool to improve the environment. If 20 students in the, by the way, the Milwaukee choice was enacted to allow people to escape, parents to escape failing schools because the whole system was determined to be failing. And it was targeted for minority children, poor children. Governor's budget allows any child eligible for the choice program who's coming from a family of $70,000 or less. Number 2, if 20 children enroll in a private school at taxpayer expense this fall, even if Superior becomes the best middle school and the best high school in the state of Wisconsin, it will forever be a failing school district. So it isn't based upon how well they do or whether they improve. He's just looking for a way to have another notch in this effort to privatize education. Now you would think that if the idea is to improve a failing school, if one is failing, that the alternative would be for a high school or middle school. Superior has a quote-unquote middle school that's not successful, the high school is not successful. All right, if you're going to apply choice, it should be students from those two schools. No. Any child is eligible, even if they're attending an elementary school that is already performing as one of the best elementary schools in the state. That just shows how fraudulent this proposal is. And the final part of the mythology on choice schools is that when they expanded choice education to Racine last year, the majority of new enrollees didn't come from public schools. They were already in private schools. So they weren't escaping anything. They were simply going to have the opportunity to get subsidized, have the taxpayers pay for what they were already paying for. And so there are a lot of holes in this thing that I am hoping, we are hoping will be improved as a result of public discussions. Steve and I, Nick, are holding these sessions throughout the district to have a public discussion, share information, hear from administrators who are already under the gun. I don't want to use that term, I guess, who are already tightly squeezed by their budgets and have nowhere to go, and they're being told that they've got to cut even further. What Steve and I learned at Rice Lake, they're facing a $750,000 budget deficit through no fault of their own. They will have to eliminate teachers. They will have to increase class size. They can't address the skills gap. They can't do anything to improve the school system and they therefore will become less of an equal provider of educational opportunity than others that can. It's simply wrong-headed and moving in the wrong direction. We're hearing that message throughout the state and look forward to hearing comments from the administrators and others who have questions or concerns. Steve?
You know, I'm one of the newest members of the legislature. I'm not as experienced at this as Senator Joe. But one of the things that really disappoints me with the governor's treatment of our children, he's letting our children have less opportunity than children elsewhere in the state. And in the Spooner School District, I mean, $6,414 versus $853. I feel that our children are just as valuable as any other child in the state of Wisconsin, and he's taking opportunities away from our children. He's also picking our pocketbooks. The money that we don't receive would go directly towards reducing our real estate taxes. Instead, that money is going to end up in suburban Milwaukee, one of the best performing economic areas of the state. It's hurting our kids, it's hurting our taxpayers, and it's hurting our businesses. And that's the long and short of it.
Nick Milroy, I'm the state representative from the 73rd Assembly District. After redistricting, I picked up the city of Spooner and many more students in the Spooner School District. I'm very proud to represent 7 public school districts and several private schools in my district, and they both do a wonderful job. I know that Spooner has a great working relationship with the local Catholic school, as do other districts, other school districts within the region that I represent. And you know, I don't want to make this an issue between support for public or private school, but the fact of the matter is, in Wisconsin, we've traditionally had one of the strongest public educational systems in the country, and we've always held that as a very important value in our state, because we believe that every child should have an equal opportunity and equal access to a great education. And we've been able to do that for many years. Unfortunately, 2 years ago when we had the last budget, we saw the largest cut to public education in the history in the state to the tune of $1.6 billion. This has created a very difficult situation for a lot of administrators, and it's really had an impact on morale in our public schools. Now with the new budget coming out, there's no new money and a larger private investment, a larger investment into private education. It's just going to exacerbate the problem for a lot of administrators, and that's why we wanted to take time today to sit down with the community here, listen to the administrators from the different districts about their issues. I know I had the opportunity about a month ago to come down and tour this school here. It's a beautiful school. The community supports it. It was paid for through a referendum. We have great staff, great administrators, and we want to continue to provide the same opportunities that our kids had 2 years ago, 20 years ago to the children of the future. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is to have strong support throughout the state for public education. So thank you.
There are two other points I want to make before we open it up here from the school districts. First, one is to emphasize the point that none of our comments about our desire, the public's need to have uniform, equal public education is an indictment of private schools or the right of parents to have choice. Choice is an important part, an important option available to parents today who choose to homeschool, who choose to send their child to private school, some of which is paid for through tax dollars because of transportation and other categorical programs, and through open enrollment, particularly where students living in one district are attending schools in another district. The real question is, if the state of Wisconsin can't afford to support public education, then how in the world do we think that we can support two school systems? You simply cannot without one suffering. The voucher program is designed to help a few, not to trivialize 25,000. Right now there's 23,000 students in the voucher program in Wisconsin, and there are 870,000 in the public school system. You can't begin to sacrifice the many for the few, or you will begin to lose your commitment to the many. The second thing to keep in mind is that test scores over the years, it is affirmed that it is a myth to suggest that students in general will perform better in the voucher schools. And what they in fact find is that in the math scores and other scores in the Milwaukee Choice program, that schools in public schools are performing about the same. So it isn't nirvana. It may be preferential for a parent, but don't we have an obligation to the parents of those 870,000 students who are also entitled to assure that their students have value? I happen to think, and I believe parents in this community strongly disagree with the governor, that public school students in Spooner are worth nothing more, that they should be entitled to the increase. And so the other point to make is that the Spooner School District in particular, like many of the northern Wisconsin school districts, is a very prudent school district. Spooner is not a big spender. And these school districts up north are not big spenders. And they have traditionally been spending less than the average in respect for taxpayers, but have done what they can through the commitment of their devoted teaching staff to bring the best out. And so this notion that somehow they should be treated as though they're big spenders is simply a huge mistake.